This podcast provides a platform for our guests to express their own personal views and opinions. Some or all of these views and opinions may not be shared by Ben and/or Yoel.
Welcome to the Too Dad to Quit podcast,
the podcast where we highlight stories of dads on the other side of divorce
to inspire and give strength to dads going through it.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Yoel.
Welcome to the Too Dad to Quit podcast. You can find us on toodadtoquit.com, Too Dad to Quit on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Don't forget to like, share, comment. This will get our message out to as many people as possible, to help as many people as possible. And don't forget to reach out to us to share your own story. Everyone has a story to share, and it can help as many people as possible. This week, we sit down with Brian Spivak. Brian, man, is a ball of energy. He's an old friend of mine. He's positivity in a nutshell. He, is just like a fervor for life. He happens to be much younger than I am, so maybe it's that. But I think his essence is positivity, and from sports to travel to his kids, anything that he puts effort into, he dives all in, and it's evident from hearing him speak.
Yeah, and Brian. It was really a pleasure, like you said, Ben. His positivity, really like the type of guy we love to have on this podcast, and he's really a great blend, great example of somebody who is very honest and authentic about, the fact that divorce is painful and that there were times that were very difficult for him, but then he talks about how he made an intention to grow and develop and make sure that he accepts the fact that this is reality, and what's he going to do about it. And he shows what he's done about it. He's taken life in his own hands, so to speak. He plays hockey, he travels, he has fun, to the point where people who had a certain view of him before see a completely different person, because he really is a completely different person. So it was just so amazing sitting down with Brian. He has so many pearls of wisdom. So for our audience, don't miss a single word that Brian has to say. You can learn from every single word of this podcast, and I'm super excited for our audience.
Yeah, and it was also cool to hear his professional trajectory and how he consciously took one comment from his manager and changed completely how he operated at work, and it has paid off completely. And we really are excited for you to hear this episode. Enjoy. This week, we are sitting down with Brian. Brian is a single father of 2 daughters, hailing from New Jersey. Brian tries to extract the most out of life while constantly pushing himself to grow through personal development. Alongside parenting, Brian is very active in his community with a leadership role in his synagogue in Tel Aviv. During his free time, Brian is pretty active, enjoying travel and playing sports such as ice hockey, snowboarding, and tennis. He always finds time to enjoy the beauty that Tel Aviv has to offer, with its beaches, parties, social events, and active immigrant community. Professionally, Brian had the pleasure of working in tech sales within really creative companies, most recently spending 5 years at Powtoon, the video animation software company. Currently, Brian is in the world of influencer marketing, connecting the creator economy with brand sponsorships and insightful data. So we should talk definitely after this show. Brian, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. I've been chasing for a long time.
Yeah, sorry it's taking so long.
It's okay. You've been traveling the world and playing hockey anywhere you can find it.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about that. The hockey, where does that come from? Because you're not Canadian, right? You're from New Jersey, if I heard Ben correctly.
That's right. It's funny. Everyone thinks I'm Canadian. Well,
I am. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, you are? Okay. So people are like, hey, Brian, you're Canadian, right? And I'm like, oh, because I play hockey. And then they're like, oh, you play hockey? And I'm like, okay, so it's definitely not that. Yeah, I don't know. I get accused in a good way of being Canadian, but I don't know. The way it started was I just picked up a hockey stick. Actually, my brother was like always into hockey. He played it like on his high school team in New Jersey. And older brother, he kind of looked up to him. And one day I just like picked up a hockey stick and I'm a lefty, and I just picked up a righty hockey stick. It was a senior stick. It was massive. I was like, I don't know, probably 8 years old or something, right? And I started playing with it. I'm like, all right, cool. This thing looks kind of interesting. And since then I've been a righty, and since then I've only been playing with senior sticks. And now, if you actually watch me play, or anyone that knows me on the ice, my sticks are always massively longer than most other players.
Are you offense or defense?
I now play offense, but I've dabbled back and forth. And I have, I guess, like an interesting trajectory of like how I got to ice hockey. So I didn't take the traditional route, which was like, all right, you're in the Northeast, right? Like, you start playing ice hockey. No, I started playing foot hockey like in my backyard, and then all of a sudden one day there was just like a roller hockey game that broke out like in front of my, like on my street. So I started playing roller hockey, got really into that, loved it, joined many leagues, wanted to play ice hockey. My parents said, no way, not happening, too dangerous. They were actually right, and I can get to that later. And they actually allowed me to play one season, and that was it. And they're like, no, it's too dangerous, too crazy.
Too expensive.
And yeah, I guess so. They didn't throw that one out there. But yeah, it is a crazy expensive sport. Now that I'm paying for it, like, I see it. Actually, crazy enough is that, like, when I made Aliyah, when I moved to Israel, moved to the Middle East, the desert, that's when I started playing ice hockey.
That's crazy. With Danny Spodek? You playing Danny Spodek?
Yeah, I play with him. Yeah, he's sometimes on our team, and yeah, he runs a lot of the leagues in Israel. Yeah.
Yeah, super cool. Send him my regards. I know him back from Toronto, but by the way, I was asking about the stick because a lot of defensemen use bigger hockey sticks, but it's pretty rare for an offense to use a big hockey stick. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, you know what? I've been saying for a while that I want to try and shorten the stick a little bit to maybe work on, I don't know, like just improving my game a little. We'll see. It might happen. I'm really trying. It's just a hard adjustment to, like, any adjustment in life is difficult, you know?
Right.
That's true. I actually also played ice hockey, but another guy growing up in Jersey, big, huge Devils fan. But I was just I skated all the time, but never hockey. I just enjoyed skating and snowing people.
Yeah.
That was my jam. Played hockey, probably roller hockey more than floor hockey. Yeah. And then I went to college, and they're like, hey, college needs another like Division II team to really join the league or something like that. And they're like, it's either between soccer and hockey. We heard you can skate, so you want to try it out? So I borrowed some guy's gear, and we started a hockey club with the hopes of being an official team. And that didn't go because hockey is expensive, and soccer you just need a ball.
Oh my God. I think that's why it's the most popular sport in the world.
Yeah, probably. And then I needed all the gear because I fell in love with it. And my father was like, sorry, no hockey, no grades, no hockey. Yeah. So for one semester, I got the best grades I ever got in my entire college career, got my gear, and then it was downhill from there. But,
yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a
I gotta say, the adjustment for me going from roller hockey to ice was really, really difficult. Okay, you get used to like the puck handling, the shooting takes some getting used to.
The skating's totally different.
The skating's totally different. And I had to make the transition because I was playing ball hockey, like roller hockey with a ball,
and then a puck.
And no, then I transferred to playing roller hockey with a puck. So I got used to that. So that was helpful in kind of managing the slower transition to ice. But then getting on the ice and trying to be like really natural and just, fluid. And, for me, skating, I was a really good skater on rollerblades. Like, that was my strength. It was like speed and just like moves, agility. And then it's totally second nature. And then all of a sudden on the ice, and you actually have to consciously think how to not do the thing that your body's so trained to do.
Yep.
And it's really challenging. So for the first like 2 years, I would constantly
Fall
be
on your face.
on my ass.
Yep.
Every single, because if you need to stop in roller hockey, you swing your foot out and create friction. If you do that in ice, you spin, you cut into the ice and you spin around in a circle and fall on your ass.
Yep. Yep.
That's so funny because I'm exactly the opposite. Like I grew up playing ice hockey. I played in a house league for 7 years.
Yeah.
And when I switched to not switch, but I would try both roller hockey, I couldn't stop. So I would just like go, I have to stop. I like crash. I'm for those listening, I'm putting my hands out to avoid, crashing into a wall. So I was the exact opposite. I was so used to ice hockey. So it's funny to hear your experience of it the opposite way. It's so funny.
Yeah, and it was really hard because I love rollerblading. I just moved and I like still have my rollerblades and I have not used them in like 8 years. And the reason is because I can't do both now. I had to make a decision. It's either ice or roller, because one time, like there was a league that was starting, a roller hockey league that was starting up, and I properly got into ice hockey and I was like feeling it. I was getting into it. And I was like doing it for like maybe a year. And so I played one game of roller, and first of all, I completely forgot how to stop and how to turn, like everything. I was a disaster. Yeah. And then when I went back to ice, I like felt like I lost 6 months on any improvement that I had. So I was like, all right, like my adult brain cannot process and handle both. It's got to be one or the other. And I'm like, all right, my heart is on the ice.
Sweet.
Yeah. So you just went to Russia. Where did you go training? You just like, you're not just a casual hockey player. Like you went to a hockey camp somewhere, no?
That's right. Good research. Yeah, good. I guess Instagram research. So I went to an international ice hockey training camp in the Czech Republic or Czechia. I don't know what they call it now. And it was not in Prague. It was in a city called Nymburk, which is like 40 minutes outside of Prague, small little quaint town in the middle of nowhere. I was there for 7 days, played ice, like basically trained, worked out, or was on the ice 4 to 5 times a day.
Wow.
It
sounds like a dream.
It was a dream, but also if your dream is like not being able to walk up the stairs to your room, I literally could not move. And that's what's crazy. And also I feel like that, I don't know, I'm watching like NHL playoff hockey now, and you just know like how hard these guys are just like getting beaten up, and you feel their like courage, their passion, their drive to like, no matter what, puck to the face, 72 stitches, doesn't matter, skate to the face, doesn't matter, getting back on the ice, like the same period. And so like that same drive of like you can, while you're getting dressed and you're putting your equipment on, you're like, I can't move. The moment your feet touch the ice, you're like, it's like just everything quiets down and you just feel so at peace, and the adrenaline just starts running, and it's magical. And I've always noticed that I can be in a ridiculous amount of pain. I could not feel good. I could just be not in the mood to play hockey at all. The moment those skates touch the ice, I don't feel any pain. I don't feel any of that. It's just like this amazing feeling. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that was one trip you made, but you're also doing like other crazy trips, like boats, ships, I don't know what they're called, out on the Mediterranean for weeks at a time. Or how is that? Where did you find that? Did you do that? Did you travel younger, or this is all a post-divorce thing that you live and let live? Because I believe you got COVID after a ski trip. Like you've been on a trip, so to speak.
Yeah, I've been very, very fortunate to be able to travel. I feel incredibly lucky. I've sometimes traveled for work, sometimes traveled for just straight up vacation. There was one trip I went on where like everyone got COVID. It was like an organized Jewish trip with like, I don't know, 100 people in 2021. It was like January 2021. It was New Year's 2021. And like everyone got COVID from it, from that trip. And listen, like that was an adventure, like navigating, like how you were gonna manage to like get all the things that you wanted. Oh, actually, no, you're right. No, there's another story related to like going on a ski trip and not getting COVID, but I was actually one of the first people in quarantine.
Okay.
So I went on a ski trip to a snowboarding trip to Austria, and it was we went January 27th to like March 2nd or something, and so like a 5-day trip. And when we got back, they announced that like anyone who had been to so on March 4th, right? So 2 days after I got back from the trip, went to the office, like it was just normal days at work. And they announced that anyone who had been to Austria, Germany, France, and like a few other countries had to go into 14 days retroactively into quarantine. So we were one of the first people to do it. And it was like crazy challenging. I did it with one of my friends who we went on the trip together. And just not being able to leave your home and and also like watching the country and the world just completely just slowly like fall apart in a way. And not having access to like prepare and get ready yourself was like really challenging. It was just like, of course, a crazy time for everyone.
Yeah, I remember you documenting that pretty creatively at some point.
Yeah.
I think you built a loft or a porch or
Yeah, we built like, it was quite funny because my friend had moved into this like kind of like a new apartment for her. And she was like in the middle of like finishing this like big room that she was building on the roof. And it was like still like during wintertime when it was like kind of raining a little bit. And it wasn't yet like fully insulated and sealed up, and like the roof wasn't really on. And so we were like kind of finishing up, like really, it was kind of actually just the base, right? The frame of the like big outdoor room was there. We needed to put on like walls and windows and insulation. And the funny part is that the insulation, like this special spray, was like to like insulate like places, whatever. It's a special foam that it like expands, right?
Yeah.
And the spray is called bidud in Hebrew, which means quarantine. No, which means
isolation.
Isolation.
So funny.
Right? And so like I started spraying it, like we're just like documenting this, and like just totally off the cuff, I'm like, this is like special bidud spray, special isolation spray to keep out like all the zombies, right? Like we pretended it was like this zombie apocalypse, but it really felt like that. And it was just like such a wild like coincidence that this spray was called bidud and we were in isolation. It was really funny. We were in
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk about. I'm so curious about this this trip, just living on a boat.
Oh
in the
yeah.
Mediterranean for a while. Where did you find the people to go with? Was it like an organized thing? Was it one guy knew how to sail a boat, and you're all like, all right, let's hop on a plane and see how that goes.
Yeah, I guess from pictures maybe it seems like that. And in some ways it's like super chill and casual. Basically this guy who I've been acquainted with for a long time has his sailing license. We went on a snowboarding trip together, like an organized snowboarding trip together. And we became from acquaintances to good friends on that trip. And he's like, all right, Brian, you got to come on the next sailing trip that I go on. And I've seen, and he's invited me in the past to go on these sailing trips. And basically he has his skipper's license. He got it from this sailing school called Yam Sailing in Tel Aviv. And they go on these organized trips. And so he invited me and I'm like, all right, let's do it. And basically what it is it's an organized trip to a certain extent, where they take like 4 or 5 boats, each with a skipper who's gotten training from and has their license from the school. And then they invite people without any experience. You don't need to have any experience to go on this trip. And it can be really anywhere there's water, I guess. But we've gone to Greece, we've gone to Sicily, and you sail around these islands, just going from island to island, like every single day, with random people. Sometimes it's friends, sometimes, we get a group that we know. And it's a flotilla of boats, right? So we're always going together. Sometimes you can't see the other boats, sometimes you can. And sometimes you get too close, sometimes it's a wild, crazy fun experience. And you're learning, in a way, you're learning how to sail. You're not going through the full motions of like
Sure.
really learning how to be a skipper, but you're learning some of the basics, and you're doing things. You're pulling the jib, you're opening this, you're anchoring, and you're understanding some of the mechanics and how things work. And if you have a good skipper like we had, friend Nick, he teaches you why we're doing this and what we need to do. And it's really, it combined, to me, it's like the ultimate trip, because it combines so many different elements. It combines like ultimate relaxation, adventure, discovery of like new places and new people and culture and food, and just so much. But also you're learning a skill, and you're be really, really intense and serious at times, because when you're like anchoring, and when there's a few boats around, like you need to be really on, and it's like no messing around. It's like focus, and we need to make sure that we're not hitting other boats and we're doing everything correctly.
Wow. And what's the price range for something like that?
I think it's like for basically a 7 to 10 day trip. It's like 7 days on the boat, and then like altogether it's like 10 days. Yeah, like I think around like 4 or 5,000 shekel. It's not crazy expensive.
It's like 1,000, 1,200, something like that, US.
Yeah, it's very reasonable.
Yes. Wow. Sounds like a dream.
Yeah, there's one coming up in June, and I can't go on it. It's just like the timing is not right. And I'm really having a little FOMO.
How big are these boats? Like, I'm just like curious, what's the sleeping arrangement like? Is it like this tiny little cabin per person? Like, how big are the boats?
Yeah, good question. So it's I think it's like everything like 40 to 50 feet, right? Oh, I guess they do feet. Yeah, it's funny how like certain things are like feet, even though it's
meter,
and
right,
like
meters,
inches, right? Like, no matter where you are, a TV is like, something, a certain number of inches, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think boats are like that also. So yeah, I think we had like 46-foot sailboat. And yeah, you're sleeping on the boat every single night. And usually you're kind of doubled up. You're sleeping in the same cabin with one other person. I think we were 6 people for an 8-person boat. The skipper / captain got his own room, and the designated chef got her own room also. That was kind of like the price, the benefit that she got. Yeah.
Cool.
That's really cool. I'm actually obsessed with like they have like the reality sailing shows.
Oh, yeah. What's it called?
I can't
Below Deck or something, right?
Yeah, Below Deck. So they have like Mediterranean, and now they've expanded like all over, and I'm obsessed with those shows. Just
Nice.
the idea of just floating around. I'm also a huge snorkeler, and scuba diving is on my short list of things to get done. So this, to me, that's like a super dreamy thing.
Yeah, it was great that I got a GoPro like right before these trips. It just made for incredible footage, and it was so much fun like editing it and putting the footage together. Wow, it's amazing.
So cool.
Yeah.
Nice. So you when after the divorce, I called you you were one of those people that like, I didn't have a big list of people that I knew that were divorced.
Yep.
And so I reached out to you and you're like, yeah, call me, dude.
Mhm.
And I remember that conversation, and it was very different than most of the conversations that I had.
Okay.
Kind of, it was much more, I guess, positive, or like, you don't know what's going to be. You can, there's so many opportunities that, you can decide what you want this side of your life to be. And it gave me a lot to think about. But I want to dive into your mind of kind of, I know it wasn't your ideal situation,
Mhm.
but that process of going from, hey, this is the reality that I'm in, to what am I going to make my reality? Because I think, you took that very seriously.
100%. Yeah.
And when was your divorce, Brian? Just for
Yeah,
our
sure.
audience. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was married 7 years and now I am divorced 7 years. So it's been a while. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Um, yeah, it's an interesting question. And I do get a lot of calls from people or like introductions. Some people I know, Ben, I happen to know you. We work together, we're friendly. But sometimes I get like calls from random people like, hey, my friend's going through divorce and can you chat with you? And I'm always happy to chat. And yeah, listen, I think I'm very lucky. In general, I'm like just a super positive, optimistic person. Um,
Definitely shows. I'm just meeting you, but it definitely shows. Yeah. You got
thanks.
great energy. Great energy. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. And listen, some of it is like, nature. But there's a lot of it that I specifically worked on. And I think that like optimism and gratitude like had to go into overdrive post divorce. It was
Mm.
like, all right, all that you kind of had a little bit of, now it's time to kick into high gear because this is like really testing your resolve. Um, and so for me, it was like it ended up being this journey of like self-improvement, trying to, find ways to stay positive, and to just appreciate life, and look at like, wow, like I have so much ahead of me, right? I have no idea what I don't know. And also the just I have like a few mantras that I've developed, or I've like just like phrases or mission statements or things. I've got like a bunch of them that I came up with. One of them that I don't think that I came up with is that I think relates to your question, Ben, is you got to deal with reality on reality's terms.
Mm.
Right? Like you can have this idea of like, well, I wish it was, how come it's not like this? No, it is. This is
Mm.
what it is, and you have to deal with reality on reality's terms. And the sooner that you're able to get that through your head, anybody in any situation, easier it's going to be for you, right?
Mm.
And I'm not somebody who likes to dwell on the past. I do think that there is that it's important to think about the past, but only in a way that's going to be beneficial and a learning experience. Something that you can be like, well, why didn't this work out? What could I have done? And it's not like about like trying to blame yourself or blame another person, but I always think about this in any situation. Why did this person just react like this? Why did this person say something that actually kind of hurt me? Why did this person, in a very sincere way said something that really hurt me? They're just a terrible person, they're mean, they're out to get me, right? Is that really it? Why did this person say that? And I think if you can pause and really just internalize whatever it is that was said, right? And maybe don't do it right away. Maybe put that in your pocket for a little bit later, when you're maybe a little bit more calm, and think, why did they say that? Right? And these were things that I had to think about. I had to look deep inside me. and realized that there were, when you get married, when you're 23 years old, there's certain, I don't know, I guess, not deficiencies, but certain things that you just lack when you're,
we're not evolved.
We're not evolved. We have our personalities have not developed, and our identity has not yet developed. And then you go into a relationship, and all of a sudden you're kind of meant to figure out how to be a mature adult that can problem solve, that can grow, that can have emotional intelligence. And that was actually something that I realized that I lacked. I lacked when I was married, I lacked emotional intelligence, right? I think I was a pretty decent communicator, but definitely improved on that. And I made it my mission to improve my emotional intelligence. And somebody recently, and because I made it one of my missions, like, it's something that I actively worked on. And when you get a compliment that, for something that you worked really, really hard on, it's really meaningful. And somebody said to me, I actually did like an interview for a fundraiser for some organization in Tel Aviv. And the interviewer said to me, he's like, wow, you've got, some, good emotional intelligence and insightful. It was a good interview. And I just said to him, I was like, you don't even know how much that means to me. This was something that I struggled with. So went off on a little tangent there, but it's something that I think we all have the opportunity to to internalize what's going on around us, and to not just harp on oh, I can't believe this happened. It's no, it happened. And I teach this to my kids all the time.
How old are your kids?
I've got two daughters. They're aged 9 and almost 11.
Cool.
And
okay, anyway,
I say to them all the time, I was like, we can't necessarily control what happens to us, but what we can control is how we respond.
100%.
Always tell that to them. And we as adults don't necessarily do that. So how can we do that? How can we take that lesson? And I always strive to figure out ways that I can respond to whatever's happening around me in a positive way, internalize it in an appropriate way, as opposed to just thinking negative thoughts. Long-winded answer, I guess.
No, that's perfect. There's so much insight in that answer that I can already see the comments rolling in, that this is really important stuff. So on the business front, I feel like I've seen you early on in your career, and then kind of watched, I guess, over the last 7-8 years of morphing Brian into what you are now. But I'd like to go back kind of into, you started out, I think it was sales, maybe account management when I knew you.
Sales. Yep.
Yeah. And then kind of, the divorce happened when we were working together, the adjustment to that. I remember your little girls running around the office. And just seeing you grow up in personally, but also professionally, is very impressive to watch from afar. So kind of your journey of how you went from, this fresh sales guy who had 2 little kids, went through, this divorce, and was still able to continue to grow along the way. I don't, maybe I didn't see it, but it seemed like you were always going forward with that aspect of your life, and you wouldn't let, whatever happened to you hold you back from growing. So I'd like to, hear from you kind of how you persevered through all of that. And then kind of some of the roles that you took on, because that's also been kind of a fun thing to watch.
It's a good question. And I guess going back to those days at Tune, we worked together. That was crazy. That was when I got divorced. It's such a pivotal moment in my life. And I remember kind because I think I was like really good at like holding it together and like being positive and for me, I think I have like pretty good control over my emotions, but yet I feel like I'm like a more emotional person. Like I'll cry at movies and I'm like, why am I crying at like this like
Fast
it's
and
like
the
so
Furious.
ridiculous to cry at this movie and I'm crying at it, right? Like I'm like, what's going on here, right? Um and I just remember going out to lunch with a guy by the name of Adam Dukes, who's like just the kindest, sweetest human being. And went out to lunch. He's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And he's like, "Yeah, you don't seem like you're yourself." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's been kind of tough." And I just remember I just like said it. I just like spit it out. Like I'm like, I'm getting divorced, and I just started like bawling, bawling. It's like all of this was like being held up
Yeah.
inside of me, and I just like let it out, and it was just a crazy intense moment, and I can't even imagine what it was like for Adam to be on the other side. Like, holy shit, this guy just like poured his heart out and told me he's getting divorced. And yeah, it's just like that was like a raw, serious, intense moment. And yeah, I guess like switching gears from the emotional part to the career growth side. It hasn't been such an easy journey for me. Like on LinkedIn or like whenever you catch up with someone, it's always like, oh, it looks like you're just rocking it.
Yeah.
It's it's been challenging, and I guess what's really cool looking back on it is I feel like when I was at my prior roles, I felt like I knew nothing. Like, sorry, now looking back and I'm like, I knew nothing. But at the time, you're like, I got this. I'm good. I know what I'm doing. And I came up with like yeah, like speaking of like a mantra or an idea, phrase, whatever, is that my I've been investing a lot in my like personal and professional growth, taking different classes and different activities or things, like reading books, podcasts, whatever. And I look back on just my time 3, 4, 5 years ago, whatever it is, and I was like, I knew nothing then. And so I realized that is kind of like maybe a little bit of a goal of mine, is that in 2 years from now, I want to look back on this time and be like, I knew nothing,
Yeah.
or to kind of like feel, to a certain degree, obviously when you compound that over, years, you shouldn't really feel like that, but you should feel like, wow, like I really grew so much. And one of the ways that I reflect on that is like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I really felt like I knew nothing compared to where I am now. So that's a good, like, I don't know, barometer for me
Mhm.
to like, to grow. But it hasn't been easy. There were many times where I felt like felt like I was going to get fired. I wasn't hitting numbers. And in sales, there's constant pressure.
Yeah.
And, I guess I've got like this, I don't know, I've got like this, I don't know, interesting personality where I'm like energetic, fun, friendly. And then sometimes I can come across as not so serious. Maybe it's not super professional. And I wanted to, grow in my career where people would take me seriously.
Right.
That wasn't like something that you could just snap your fingers and happen overnight. And sometimes you have to, I think with any stage, any growth that you experience in life, there's going to be a crazy amount of pain that comes with it, right? I think like we all can relate to divorce, right? The growth that happens after divorce is because this immense pain that you experienced. And I remember there was a pivotal moment. I don't think I really shared this with anyone. But there was a pivotal moment at my last job where I was doing well. I was like, fine. And there was a moment where my boss said to me, and my boss can be pretty dry and to the point, and like, you know, he definitely wasn't one for like
Chit chat.
praise and chit chat, the small talk, just like kind of straight to it. But I learned a ton from him. I learned so much from him. And there was a pretty intense moment where he said to me, he's like, how do you think your colleagues feel about you? Like on my specific team.
Right.
Right?
Wow.
Like, do you think that they take you seriously? And I was like, whoa. And I had like this moment of like, wow. This like fun, energetic, like clown who's like, okay, fine, can like, you know, make sales and like hit targets sometimes, right? Not always. But do they perceive me as like professional? And it's like hit me. And I wasn't like, oh, why did he say that? He's such a jerk, you know? I was like, no, he's sharing something that is probably really hard for him to share.
Yeah.
And it was like this moment where I'm like, screw this. Like I remember that feeling was one of the worst feelings I've had internally. I was like, I never want to feel like that again. I never want to feel like people don't take me seriously, that they're maybe making fun of me or whatever it is. I never want that feeling that I had again. What am I going to do to prevent that from happening? And it was a pivotal moment. I turned it around, and, you know, probably people didn't notice. It was a very gradual thing. And I noticed a significant change. And, you know, over the course of time, new people come into the company. And I noticed that people's perception of me was completely different than what it was.
Wow.
What did you do?
He
What
stopped
did I
making
do?
jokes.
No, listen, I don't think you can take the humor out of it, but I don't know. I don't think I could specifically pinpoint one or two things. It was just a hyper awareness of the things that I say. And maybe it's not, yeah, maybe it's actually not joking around all the time, but like when it's time to be serious, it's let's be serious. Let's focus. And also investing in my personal and professional growth, and like realize where my potential shortcomings are, things that I struggled with, and in investing in those things and not trying to like hide them or push them away, but saying, no, I realize that I have a shortcoming in this particular area. I'm going to work on that.
Well, you know, and I wanted to ask you, I mean, first of all, I just wanted to say that I reflect back on what you shared. I really relate to that concept of this boss at the time asking you, you know, how do you think people look at you? I've had a few sort of, you know, revelations myself where I perceive myself in a certain way, and then I hear certain things that people say to me, and it's like, really, is that how you look at me, or is that how that person looks at me? And I think that, you know, there's it's sort of trite or cliche to say, like, what do you care what other people think? And there's some truth to that. You have to, you know, be secure in yourself.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that you can't learn, or it can't be instructive to hear how other people view you. So I really relate to what you're saying. And thanks for that, Brian. But but what I wanted to ask you is, you know, you sort of mentioned investing in yourself, because I'm into that as well, personal development. I started buying a lot of books and listening to more podcasts. So I'm curious if you can share with our audience what sort of personal development steps or how you invested in yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I'm into, you know, finding those like those books, those, I don't know, self-help books, but you know, there's some that are just really incredible. There was a few that were pretty inspirational, and there's a few YouTube shows that I've been watching. There, yeah, and there's classes that I took also. So I'll go through like some of the books first, then the YouTube stuff.
Awesome.
And some of these just really, if you internalize it, you really focus on like what they're saying, it could really be life-changing. So one of them is a book by Tim Ferriss, which is like his, you know, like his summaries of many of his podcasts, and he interviews some of the greatest leaders and minds, and just titans of everything. And actually, the book is called Tools of Titans. Big
Yeah.
book. I just moved, so it's not on my book. It's not on my bookshelf yet, but it is one of those books that's like readily accessible. Like if I have a few minutes, open that book to any page and just start reading.
Amazing.
And that's what's really cool about the book. Yeah. And then there was this book called How to Talk to Anyone, or How to Talk to Anyone, I think it's called, by Lyle Loundis. I think I'm pronouncing her name wrong.
It's okay. We'll get it from you after the show. We'll put it.
Yeah. And it's like all about communication skills, all about effective speaking habits, communication, and that really helped me. I then also, there's a few things that helped my communication skills that I'll get to that in a minute. I started doing improv. I started taking improv classes.
I forgot about that.
That's awesome.
It's something that's been on my mind for a while. Like I've been listening to different podcasts, and just hearing how people can like reenact and like just get into moments and like improvise off the cuff was like super impressive. And a couple of like guests or co-hosts on these shows would say, oh, I started taking improv classes or doing improv, and you could just hear how it improved their ability to just contribute to the show. And so I was like, I want to do this. I never really kind of like pursued it. And then one day my company did like a company fun day outing. And as part of it, they brought in some somebody to do like improv fun games. Nice. And it was super fun, hilarious, entertaining. And I went over to the host afterwards, and I said, oh, do you do classes or anything? She's like, yeah, absolutely. Her name is Adaya. She does these like English speaking improv courses for beginners, for people with anxiety. You can do advanced courses. And she's got like, she's part of an improv troupe, and they're called Barefoot, and they put on shows, and they're absolutely hilarious. If you want to laugh for like 45 minutes straight, you go to that show. It's hilarious. Even in my classes that I'm taking, we're learning certain skills and concepts, and then we're just laughing and just acting, and just we're having a great time. Yeah.
That's so cool.
And actually the biggest game changer for me was mantra, phrase, concept, New Year's resolution that I took on that literally changed my life. And people have actually said to me, like, over the last 2 years, I've seen just like a different version of Brian. And it was just this New Year's resolution that I came up with, which was say yes to things that make you uncomfortable, but that are objectively good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes to things that make you uncomfortable, that are objectively good.
That's where growth lives, right there.
Yeah, 100%. And my first test of that was like we were going to a conference, like at my last job at Powtoon. We were going to a conference, and the head of marketing, whatever, came over to me, and she's like, Brian, we're going to this conference. We have a speaking slot. We want you to speak. You up for that? I'm like, yeah, of course, no problem. In my head, I'm like, no, no, what are you doing? You're crazy. You hate public speaking. Like, you're terrible. Like, no, that's gonna make your trip to Vegas like so much worse. Like, no.
Yeah.
And that was my first test.
That's great.
It ended up going really, really well. It was my first real time like doing like proper public speaking. And since then, I've like, other people have asked me, like, at just like my community and my synagogue, they'll be like, oh, Brian, we're doing some like fundraiser. Can you speak for it? And I was like, yeah, sure. No problem. And then now I like, I do it all the time. I was like scared of it. And now I get up like without, sometimes really with only like 2 minutes of preparation. My rabbi will sometimes come over and be like, hey, Brian, can you talk about like this and this concept, like to the synagogue today? And I'm like, cool. Yeah, sure. No problem. And I'll like get up and just speak kind of like off the cuff, which is crazy because like 2 years ago, I could never even do anything close to that.
Wow.
And the important part is for anyone who wants to take on this idea is it's not enough to just say, oh yeah, it sounds like a great concept, but you have to hold yourself accountable. Say it out loud. Tell people that this is something that you want to do. Not necessarily public speaking, whatever it is, just that you want to say yes to things that are uncomfortable. So that when somebody does ask you, hey, can you do this thing for me? Or can you help me out? The answer is yes, because you've told them that that's your thing now.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
putting it out into the ether is a very important big part of that.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to your thing saying you didn't know anything at your job when you look backwards. So there's this really cool concept of trusting in your future self. So right now you're in a position and it looks impossible, but in 5 years from now, you're going to look back and be like, oh, that was easy. Like, come on, future self's got it. I don't have to get it right now, but I'm going to work at this and I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to succeed. And my future self is going to look back and be like, why were you worrying about that? So this future self guy, you need to trust in him because he is super powerful. He knows much more than you ever knew at this moment. And he's got worlds of knowledge, worlds of skill, and he'll take you through anything. So
I love that, Ben. That's really cool. Yeah. And it's like, okay, now how can I help future self get to that point?
Exactly.
What do I need to do? And yeah, it's like, the visualization, like see yourself as successful, talk about that you're going to be able to do this thing and you can make it happen. Yeah. That's cool. I like that.
Exactly. And the other thing I heard recently was apparently Steve Jobs says you can't connect the dots going forward.
Yeah.
But when you go forward, you see those dots clear as day.
Yeah. I love that. That's great.
So
100%.
knowing, when you're in it, you have no clue. But when you're out of it and you look back, you'll be like, oh, dude, I had to work with Brian because Brian, I needed him on my podcast.
Yeah.
So easy peasy. But when you're in it, you have no clue. Like, what is this Brian guy doing in my life? So, and
so true.
The last thing I really like is there's no such thing as an extra in your movie of your life. So every person from start to finish that is anywhere in your sphere, in your life, that movie of your life, is there for a reason. And there are no extras. You don't know what that reason is. It might not even be in your lifetime. It could be, 3 generations later. Oh, your dad was Ben? Oh, my mom used to hang out with him in high school.
Yep.
Let's go out and date. And who knows?
Yeah. Who knows?
So those are kind of like really big concepts that are always in my mind because people get lost and they, lost in the past, lost in not knowing the future. And there's a lot of trust there. But as long as you keep moving forward, hopefully you'll be able to look back and see those dots and why those things happen to you.
100%. And like, I also just want to clarify something that, I don't know, maybe I made it seem like, oh, when I got divorced, it was like, oh, like, I'll just stay positive and everything's going to be fine. But when I got divorced, and especially during the period where it was like we weren't sure if we were going to stay together, was one of the worst times of my life. Like emotionally, you're in this like purgatory period, and you feel like the biggest failure. And you're like, you couldn't hold this together. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, you feel like your life is over. That's how I felt. Right. So maybe I painted this picture like, oh, I'll be positive and everything's gonna be great. No, I felt like my life was over and I was a friggin' failure. Like, yeah. And so, but the lesson is that you really can turn it around and you can say, and what I did was, like basically there was a period of, hey, wow, this is terrible. This is like the worst feeling in the world. This like uncertainty. That was the worst part, the uncertainty.
Yeah.
But for me, I said the moment it was like 100%, this is done, it's over. I was like, all right, how do we move on from here? And that was a switch for me.
Yeah, I actually had written out, if we stay together, this is the plan. If we get divorced, I have this plan. And I didn't put plan B in motion until I walked out of that divorce court.
Yeah.
But as soon as I did, like literally the day, I started working.
Amazing.
Because again, in my mind, I did everything humanly possible not for it not to happen. But then, as you said, you have to accept the reality that is, and do what you need to do within it.
100%, yeah. And that's such a great feeling too, Ben, is to feel that you did everything that you could. It's a really good feeling. And I can say the same. That's not to say like, oh, if your ex would be like, no, well, he didn't do this in our marriage and blah blah blah. I'm talking about like when you're trying to like figure out if there's a way that you guys can stay together. Once you're at that critical point, do you feel like you did everything that you could? And it's a really important feeling that can help you go forward, is like do everything you can in that moment to keep it together. However, like you said, have that contingency plan. Like, great, if it goes south and I need to then be on my own and be that single father, here's my plan. And yeah, like you just executed on that from day one. So like, nice job.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Brian, also for our audience, because I think it is also important for our audience to understand that it's okay to grieve. In other words, like it's okay to have a period of time where you're figuring out that shit. In other words, like, everybody's different, right? So different people take different amounts of time. I think where it gets dangerous is where people sort of try to deny, not try, and maybe not even consciously, but they're denying their feelings, they're denying their emotions. It's just like, you know what I mean? They're kind of close to it. I think it's important to feel it, and that could take, a month for some people. Like I have some friends who got remarried within a few months. And now it doesn't mean necessarily that they did the work. I don't know, but I'm just giving that as an example. There are other men that may take 3 years. Like it really depends on everyone. But I think I'm glad you brought it up, that it wasn't just like Mr. Positive all the time, that you had to work on that, and it was a process. Because I think our audience know that it's okay, it's natural, it's normal to have feelings of failure, to have feelings of like what went wrong. But that doesn't mean that you can't turn it around at some point. Just sort of accept the fact that you're going through those feelings. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, 100%, Yoel. Yep.
Yeah, and talking about being a single father, how has your relationship with your kids changed since the divorce? Because I know they were very close with you, but have things changed, or how you parent, or this new communicative person? Do they see the effects of that as well?
I think just like as we grow as parents, like we're just constantly evolving. I don't think that my kids have noticed anything different. They're just getting older and more aware of life anyway, and they have now their strong opinions. So no, I don't think that there's anything that they could really see. I think I'm super lucky and grateful that I have a really great relationship with my kids. They're super loving. I have a great relationship with my ex, which unfortunately is quite rare. We've always maintained a really good connection, and I'd like to say, oh, this is the formula for how to do it, blah blah blah. It's so complicated, and it's probably the hardest thing to do, because you're not in control of that. Things that you can do, and you could want it so badly, and you're like, no, I'm being such a good person, like why can't? And so I have no judgment of people who don't have that, because I know it's so rare. And it's almost like you have to find your the one who's right for you to be your ex, like,
Yeah, you have to know who to divorce. But I'm curious
yeah,
about that, Brian, not to cut
yeah,
you off, but that
go
is
ahead.
such an important concept. You said you're not in control of that. So, because you said earlier that we can control our responses and our reactions. So there's an element of control, I guess, in our growth and doing what we can to be conscious. But I find that that is very true in a certain sense, that at the end of the day, it takes two to tango. So like, what's your advice to people if you do have some that have challenges with their ex-wife where they feel like they are doing everything humanly possible to try and keep peace and be, civil, and they just find that they're, from their perspective, their ex just won't let them, like they just can't get to that point. Is there any advice you would give for somebody in that situation?
Yeah, I think, uh, I haven't been there. I haven't been to, I mean, of course, we get into disagreements and, it can get heated sometimes and there can be anger and frustration, but never to the point where like things were falling apart, where it affected like so much. It affected our kids, like super lucky. So I I I can't say I've been there, but I guess just from a communication standpoint, like maybe it's maybe it's something as just like, hey, what do we want out of life for our kids? Like, what are our goals? Okay, we want our kids to be happy. How do we get there? What are the things that we should never do? What are things that we should do? And like sometimes it's just simple as like almost like putting it down on paper, holding each other accountable. Um, and because of course, like we know that it's toxic to say like, oh, your father never does this and your mother did that, but like we know that that's toxic, but like, but it's human nature sometimes to like feel like want to have some vengeance or take it out, because she did this and therefore I'm gonna do this, or it's really easy to get caught up in that. But I think if you establish like ground rules of like what are the things that we want and what are the things and how do we get there, this is the goal, we want our kids to be happy and we want to have a good relationship ourselves. How do we get there? How do we make sure that resentment and like just other negative emotions don't get in the way, because they're gonna creep up. So how do we make sure that we prevent that? And when it does happen, how do we resolve it? I think it's just like trying to have those conversations, and sometimes there's a completely immature party on the other side that just you can't even have that conversation.
I was about to say, some people can't even have that
Can't. And
conversation.
then you can't. And I think in some ways it's just that's where you have to be like, all right, this is the reality that I'm dealt with. Now, how do I work with this? And
Right.
it freaking sucks.
Mm.
I haven't felt that. I'm super lucky. But like that is it's just the reality that so many single parents face, is that they
But
have
you can still work on yourself. You can still do what you can on your end to make it as best as you can and to let
yeah,
go and to not be resentful, even if you feel that you don't have a partner on the other side. Yeah.
for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. And I think always maintaining a um positive image, and talking about your ex, the mother or father of your children in a positive way, even if it's not happening on the other side, because your kids will remember that. Your kids will remember how you spoke about their mother, their father, and at the end of the day, you're insulting their mother, their father. Like, why is that helpful? Yeah, they're doing it fine. So now you want to have two sides, right? You want to have, all right, they already feel this negative thing about their father because their mother is saying negative things. Now you want your kids to have the other way also. Like, so two wrongs don't make a right, obviously, but like it's so hard it's very difficult. So again, I'm not speaking from experience on that side, and I can only imagine the level of like pain and emotional complications that having those disagreements. So I am grateful, and I like literally thank God every single day or most weeks that I have a good relationship with my ex. Like it's one of the things that I'm so grateful for.
Wow, well said.
Wow. So I wanted to get back to your kids for a second.
Sure.
Have they learned how to play ice hockey yet? Or when is that happening?
I was like, oh man, Ben's going like deep. Like this is gonna be
I
an
thought so.
important
I was thinking the
question.
same
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, I thought we were like getting into like some, crazy.
Sorry, Yoel, you totally sidetracked my kid track here.
That's really funny.
That was hilarious.
Wow, I would love nothing more for that to happen. I try and we'll watch we try and watch hockey together. I mean, I can barely watch hockey because it's at like 2 a.m, but like I'll watch the highlights sometimes. And I'll watch, like highlight reels of games and highlight reels of just like great plays with my kids. And so I'm trying to get them really into hockey. They love ice skating and they're really good at it. They're really, really good at it. It's like I mean, one of my kids has just incredible balance to begin with. And actually that's funny. They're like athletic and they're each athletic in their own unique way. But they love ice skating. They love it so much. Now I actually just moved and I have like a proper outdoor space and I want to set up like nets and like a little like fake ice to like stick handle and whatever. So I don't know, maybe they'll get into it now that I have a little more space in the yard. So
do they come to your games?
oh my God. So it's quite rare because the games are really, really late.
Yeah.
But
are there any women playing generally? I wanted to ask you, like, are there any women there that are playing?
Yeah, so there are games, there are like pickup games. And in the casual pickup games, there are women that come. But my kids got to experience and watch like one of the greatest sporting moments I've ever had and will ever have in my life. If there's time, I can share it because it's
go for it.
So I'll try and make it short, but I'm in this league. Our team is the Knights, and actually our jerseys kind of look very similar to the Golden Knights, the Vegas Golden Knights. And it's a bunch of awesome guys that I've been playing ice hockey with for a while now in Israel. Just great dudes, North Americans, like all international immigrants from US and Canada. And our team made it to the finals. And the finals, it's best of 3. So you have to win 2 games. The first game we lost, I was out of town. The second game, we won. And then so it's game 3, it's like game 7, and winner takes the championship. So my kids came to this game, and it's actually a rather low scoring game. It's 1-1 after regulation. The game goes into overtime and sudden death overtime. And the league adopted what the NHL started doing, which is 3-on-3. And, which is just super exciting and crazy. And they put me on the ice to start, and I'm coming down the left side, and I, cut to the right. Shoot goes through the goalie's legs. Game over, championship won on that shot. That is
the best,
the single greatest thing. And my kids were there. It's
the Mighty Ducks moment. That's it right there.
It's crazy because I've never even been in that type of moment, right? Not only did I not win, but I never even had that moment, right? Then for our team to win and to come off my stick was just and for my kids to be there was just one of the greatest moments. And it was just, last year. It was really, really cool. Yeah.
Awesome. And speaking of moments, this is the Too Dad to Quit podcast. Yeah. And so we like all of our guests to share a Too Dad to Quit moment. Moment when you've been proudest, that moment when you're full of pride and your face lights up when you talk about it. and I know it's gonna be hard to beat that story, but I have faith that you can do it. So we'd love for you to share one of those moments with our audience.
Yeah, sure. I was thinking about this. I was like, what moment can I find? And I actually it's not one single moment. Sorry to be cheesy, but it's every day. No, but I actually really feel like it's these everyday moments with my kids. And as you guys can see, and as I've talked about, just like gratitude and appreciation is such an important trait that I try and have and I try and teach to my kids. And I think it's something that my kids have really taken on and just have naturally, but also
Nice.
it's because of the way that we've raised our kids to be super appreciative of everything and to not spoil them. And we really don't. So I think like the too dad to quit moment is really every single time I tell my kids that like we're gonna do something, we're gonna, or here's this gift, or we're going to a certain friend's house, right? Or like whatever it is, their reaction is their eyes light up and they're so excited. They're like, really? It could be anything like, oh, like we're going to such and such house for Friday night dinner. Really? Or like I'll get them a gift and it'll be like a bracelet from one of my trips and they'll be like, oh my god, I love it. They're just so happy and they're not like, well, why doesn't it push buttons and like download and like show me videos? They're just super appreciative of every little thing. And I think there's so much that we could learn from our kids, who in general, like naturally, babies and kids, they just look at the world like, whoa, how does that work? That's so cool. And they're so appreciative. And then, unfortunately, sometimes technology can just like ruin that. But recently I didn't even make the connection, but recently, I remember like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, no, last week, I think it was two weeks ago. I was just like walking throughout Tel Aviv and I was like, I just started appreciating things around me. And I'm like, wow, look at the building, look at the flowers, the lights. And I was like, cool, I'm gonna walk home and just be a little kid. I just appreciate all these things.
That's
And all of a sudden
awesome.
my like world lit up. And I'm like, there's so much beauty around me. And we just walk through it. Like we don't appreciate it sometimes.
Yep, 100%.
Beautiful.
And the last thing that we like to leave all of our audience with is some tips or advice that you would give to anyone that's going through a divorce, thinking about divorce, already on the other side of divorce. Something that you learned that we haven't covered today that you think you would like to share with, and you get those calls, and who knows going to listen to this, and you can have a real impact.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can add. Hopefully most of what I said today, can be helpful.
Yeah.
I would say like don't be afraid to share your feelings with other people. Talk to people, find a friend, a confidant, somebody that you can, really speak to. And sometimes it's hard with family, right? Because they're like almost like they could be like so sad for you, right? And you're like, you don't want somebody who's just gonna feel sad for you. You want somebody who you can really trust, somebody who can just give you perspective, and not necessarily somebody who's been through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But of course, it definitely helps, if it's somebody who's been through it. But the other two things are just like communication and gratitude. Like I think if you have proper communication with your kids, with your ex, with your family, so much can come from that. And gratitude, just appreciate every moment, because you don't know when this moment that you're having right now is going to be, which seems mundane, is going to be the most amazing moment for you, 10 years from now, and you're gonna be like, I wish I had this moment, and you're living it right now. So appreciate it.
That's amazing.
Incredible
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, Brian, thank you so much for this. This was a blast, and
Thanks a ton. Yes. Amazing.
Guys, yeah, this was super fun. Really, really enjoyed this. My first time doing a podcast. So hopefully this takes off my podcast guest career. Who knows?
Well, if you need any references.
Yeah,
and
appreciate it, guys. Yeah.
Sure. And this has been the Too Dad to Quit podcast. Thank you for listening. You can find us at toodadtoquit.com, Too Dad to Quit on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Don't forget to check out our Clips channel, and we will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Too Dad to Quit podcast. Available at toodadtoquit.com. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.